President Trump is promising new steps next week to bolster national security in light of the fact that the Ninth Circuit did not reinstate his travel ban. So where do you think all this is headed?
Well, it looks like he's going to take two tracks. On the one hand, he said he's going to continue fighting in the courts, but that now is going to take a long time. Chances are that it could take weeks or months. Remember, the travel ban is only 90 days. It could take that long to adjudicate that in court. So while he says he's going to do that, my guess is you're going to see new executive actions. Perhaps he'll be rewriting the executive order. Perhaps he'll be taking other steps to try to protect the extreme vetting, that kind of thing, to try to protect against people who wish us harm coming into the country. But clearly the original executive order is not going to go into effect anytime soon.
Now, President Trump called the first judge in this case a so-called judge and said that the ruling was disgraceful. Of course, President Obama was critical of the Supreme Court over Citizens United, but this seems like a new tone. What do you think?
Well, I agree. Not to say that President Obama or other presidents haven't taken issue with the judiciary branch, whether it was a federal district court or the Supreme Court. But as with so often with President Trump, it seems to be unusually personal. As you say, talking about a so-called judge saying that a slow-witted high school student could have understood the arguments that were at issue in the Court of Appeals, and as you say, also talking about the hearing as being disgraceful and political. So there is a kind of personal invective here, and that's what you saw the Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch responding to when he said he found all of this demoralizing and disheartening.
I was going to ask you about him. So what do you think about his confirmation, and does the fact that he has shown some independence from the president help him out in any way?
Yeah, I think it certainly does help him out, because to the degree that you have some Democrats who are very concerned about this president challenging, and especially given the rhetoric we've just talked about, challenging the independence of the judiciary, to have his Supreme Court nominee distancing himself from some of the rhetoric from the president, it probably helps him with some Democrats. On the other hand, you had this very odd thing, because as I say, this actually could help the nomination, the confirmation of Neil Gorsuch, but then you had the White House denying that he was referring to Donald Trump at all. They said he was just making general comments about, when he said disheartening and demoralizing, about attacks on the judiciary. And the question I would ask, and you could ask it yourself or your viewers can, who other than the president has been attacking judges in the last couple of weeks?
Right, exactly. Georgia Congressman Tom Price sworn in today as the new Secretary of Health and Human Services. So what's it going to be? Repeal and replace, repair, and what does the timeline look like at this moment?
Well, I think it's going to be more repeal and replace than repair, if only in a rhetorical sense, to be able to say, I mean, the promise was not we're going to repair Obamacare. The promise on the campaign trail and for the last 7 years by Republicans is we're going to repeal and replace it. The timeline, very curious, because I've talked to top Republican leaders in that building behind me who are talking about being able to get most of this done by March or April. But then in his interview before the Super Bowl with Bill O'Reilly, President Trump was talking about into 2018. I can tell you that caused a lot of consternation among Republicans on Capitol Hill, who think this could be done a lot quicker and think if it takes that long, if it takes another 12 months, then it really slows down the rest of a very ambitious Trump agenda on tax reform and infrastructure and trade and a whole bunch of other issues.
Yeah, there's plenty of consternation to go around. What do you have coming up this weekend on Fox News Sunday?
Well, hopefully we'll get a little clarity on all of this when we talk to the president's senior policy advisor, Stephen Miller, not quite the household name people like Kellyanne Conway are, but a very important player in this White House, really the person along with the president who wrote his inaugural address, the key policy person, very involved in that executive order on the travel ban. We'll be talking to him about what's happened so far, where they're headed from here. And then we'll be talking to Senator Ben Cardin. He's the top Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. We'll talk to him about an effort to push back, whether it's obstruction, whether it's loyal opposition, whatever you want to call it, by Democrats pushing back on the Trump agenda and some of the Trump nominees.
It continues to be like drinking out of a fire hose, doesn't it?
I was going to say, other than that, we got nothing to talk about, Russ.
All right. We'll be watching as always. Chris, thanks very much.